of the theories of capital structure is the pecking order theory, that firms choose retained earnings first because it's easiest, then debt because it's cheapest, then hybrid securities, and as a last resort, they will issue new equity. Let's look at an example of why this might be the case. Please pause the video now and read the problem, and let's look at why a firm is going to find that retained earnings are the cheapest, then debt, and finally new equity. Let's look at the situation that we're in. The company wants to raise $32 million for a new project. They could issue debt, and if they do issue debt, they'll issue debt that lasts a year, and will carry a 5% interest rate. But there's a problem with this interest rate. It's 5% is what they're going to have to pay, but they think that's really too high of a price, and they think the fair value interest is really only 4% interest. Let's evaluate the debt alternative. If they issue debt, then they're going to have to pay back $32 million times the principal plus 5% interest 1 year from now. They think that this really should have been evaluated at 4%, not 5%. So 33.6 divided by what they think is the correct discount rate is 32.31. So what this says is the debt is going to cost them $32.31 million. They need $32 million, but they have to pay $32.31 million because they believe they're being charged too much in interest. Well, the next problem is equity. When a company issues new equity, typically it is underpriced, and that can be anywhere from a few percent to 10%, sometimes more. They think that their equity is going to be underpriced by 7%. And why do they think that? Probably because their investment banker has told them that this is the case. So what that means is they have to sell more than $32 million in equity to raise $32 million. So let's let X be the amount raised in the issue. So X minus 7% times X equals $32 million. So they have to raise a larger amount, subtract 7% of that as the fee to the investment banker in order to net $32 million. I get 0.93X equals 32, and I can solve for X, and I get 34.4 million. So they're going to have to raise 34.4 million in order to end up with 32 million, which is what they need for the project. So let's continue with that. Let's suppose they have shares that sell at $50 a share. They're going to sell those shares at 93% of value. In other words, the investment banker will only give them $46.50 a share because the rest is going to be the fee that goes to the investment banker. So how many shares are they going to have to raise? They want 32 million at $46.50 a share. They need 688,172 shares. These shares are worth $50 a share. So this is the shares needed. and this is the current price of the shares. So they're going to have to raise $34.4 million to get to net that $32 million that they need. So let's look at what we have. If they used retained earnings, if they had retained earnings, and the problem doesn't really say, if they had retained earnings, it would cost them $32 million. Using debt, we determined from the previous slide, would cost them $32.31 million. And raising new equity, issuing new shares, would cost them $34.4 million. So sure enough, retained earnings is the easiest and the least costly because it's there. There are no transactions costs. Debt is the next most costly, particularly in their case because they believe they're getting undervalued debt. And finally, issuing new equity is the most expensive. And let's look for a moment at why new equity is the most expensive. Everybody knows that the correct investment strategy is to buy low and sell high. The company is in essence selling equity by issuing new equity. The market knows that you're supposed to buy low and sell high. They also know that company management knows more than they do about the price. So whenever a company announces it's selling new equity, they're sending a signal that management is saying, hey, this is overpriced, we're selling equity while the selling is good, and that sends a very negative signal to the market. Investors say, hey, if the people who know stuff think that the equity is overpriced, maybe they're right, and maybe, just maybe, I should sell my shares too, and that makes the price go down.